Welcome to Matters Financial and Geopolitical from the Frontier. Thank you for stopping by. Let me start with some macro thoughts. This is the first anatomical evidence of several types of schizophrenia. And it's an article in the New Scientist, but what grabbed my attention was the image of the brain and thinking about what goes into it, how it connects us with the past, how it helps us think. And it sort of caught my attention. Saudi, Dubai, and Qatar CDS via Holga makes an interesting image. Of course, Saudi and the UAE have been seeking to put tremendous pressure on Qatar, and the removal of Tillerson probably helps them assert even more pressure on Qatar. David Davis says a good deal is closer than ever before and rallies the pound very sharply. I saw it as high as 140.74, but we're last trading at 140.26, that kind of area, 140.27. So, but a big move because we were around the 139 level before that news hit the table. Britain's FTSE hits the lowest level since December 2016, and a lot of that is to do with the strength in sterling. Very interesting interview in the New Statesman with Nassim Taleb, who says, I hope for Goldman Sachs' bankruptcy. Asymmetry in risk-bearing, he warns, leads to imbalances, black swans, the rare but high-impact events described in his 2007 mega seller, and potentially to systemic ruin. Taleb, who became rich as a derivatives trader, is not a foe of capitalism, but of cronyism. If you're taking risks, God bless you. This is why I accept inequality. I've even seen people go from trader to cab driver and back again. He similarly denounces armchair interventionists. There's a corrective mechanism in nature. A predator typically inflicts risk on others, but also on itself. Unless warmongers are more exposed to dying than others, it's the equivalent of reckless driving, being isolated from the risks of reckless driving. Is he suggesting that, like George Orwell in Spain, neocons should have joined the Iraq front line? They should have kept their mouths shut, here it lies. They give you an award, then they own you. We've survived 200,000 years as humans, says Taleb. Don't you think there's a reason why we survived? We're good at risk management. And what's our risk management? Paranoia. Optimism is not a good thing. Is the paradox, I ask, like human pessimism offers grounds for optimism? Exactly, Taleb replies, provided psychologists don't fuck with it. That took me to William Burroughs, who said a paranoid is someone who knows a little of what's going on. A psychotic is a guy who's just found out what's going on. I like this tweet from Jeff Bezos, taking my new dog for a walk at the Mars 2018 conference. 1 million WhatsApp messages were sent in the time it takes you to read this headline. This is the new digital now. Let's move on to political reflections. This is Putin taking the plunge into another 6 years. Putin's fans have fallen for the idea that he is a brilliant strategist who annexed Crimea, intervened in Syria, and meddled in the US elections without paying a price, says Gideon Rachman, and then proceeds to say that he has paid a heavy price. I personally think that Putin is a geopolitical grandmaster. His return on investment is just off the charts. And I wrote a piece, and that was around the intervention in Syria, when I said, I was writing about that intervention, the speech he made at UNGA, the way he intervened. And we're just 2 years just over 2 years down the road from there, and he turned the tide, certainly. German President Frank-Walter Steinmeier, who has called for closer relations with Russia, becomes the first Western leader to congratulate Putin on his re-election. Now, there's a huge debate going on about Cambridge Analytica, and my overarching point is this: it's all in plain sight now, but what will be done? It's quite a pivotal moment for Western democracies, in my opinion. Facebook, Cambridge Analytica, Jared Kushner, Trump. I mean, you can now see it, Vlad the Impaler. The question is, it's an inflection point, and I think a lot depends on how the West now responds to having found this symptom of a very big disease. Have a look at the Channel 4 News video. Cambridge Analytica uncovered secret filming reveals election tricks. Have a listen in full, it's extremely good. And in that, Ian Dunt noticed striking hearing Cambridge Analytica brag about their control in Kenya, party branding, researching, writing manifestos like a conspiracy theory, except it's true. And in that interview, the CEO says it's no use fighting elections on the facts, it's all about emotions. And Louise Ridley tweeted, well, that pretty much sums up the last few years. That took me back to a piece I wrote in September 2012, but it was referencing something in a US Army journal from 1997. And in that journal it said one of the defining bifurcations of the future will be the conflict between information masters and information victims. Information warfare will not be couched in the rationale of geopolitics, the author suggests, but will be spawned like any Hollywood drama out of raw emotions, hatred, jealousy, and greed. Emotions rather than strategy will set the terms of information warfare struggles. 5th of December 2016, I wrote that piece, We Have a Deviate Tomahawk, and I was pointing the finger at Russia. But obviously Cambridge Analytica, with their connection to Leak Oil, their connection into the Trump administration, were the instrument. St. Petersburg University, and I was quoting Don DeLillo, who was talking about how the specialist is monitoring data on his mission console when a voice breaks in. A voice that carried with it a strange and unspecifiable poignancy. He checks in with his flight dynamics and conceptual paradigm officers at Colorado Command. We have a deviate tomahawk. We copy. There's a voice. We have gross oscillation here. There's some interference. I've gone redundant, but I'm not sure it's helping. We are clearing an outframe to locate source. Thank you, Colorado. It's probably just selective noise. You are negative red on the step function pod. It was a voice, I told them. We've just received an affirm on selective noise, which seems to be the moment we're in right now. We will correct Tomahawk. In the meantime, advise you to stay redundant. The voice, in contrast to Colorado's metallic pigeon, is a melange of repartee, laughter, and song with a quality of purest, sweetest sadness. Somehow we were picking up signals from radio programs of 40, 50, 60 years ago. A different personality quiz he was using to pull Facebook data via its API in St. Petersburg in summer 2014. He was measuring the dark triad of psychopathy, narcissism, and Machiavellianism. This is the Cambridge professor, who's also at Alexandra Kogan, is his name. And then Carol on Twitter saying, I think they did test runs on us in 2014. And this is referring to while Kremlin spies were canvassing our country in 2014, Prigozine's bots were turning up their chaos methods. One effort included spreading hysteria about Ebola via fake news. In 2014, Trump mirrored the St. Petersburg trolls' false Kremlin narrative. Another interesting piece in the Daily Kos: Trump's billionaire benefactors and Steve Bannon corrupted our democracy with stolen Facebook data. Pretty much saying what I've already been saying, but it gives you all the names. Facebook had its worst day in 4 years, dragging the stock market lower, obviously under pressure from lawmakers in both the United States and the UK, after more than 50 million users' data ended up in the hands of Cambridge Analytica. When you have real damage to a large enough company, that translates into the indices as a whole. What Facebook knew about misusing data from 50 million Americans in order to get target political advertising and manipulate voters, asked John Kennedy. Investors worry that the new regulations on Facebook or an exodus of users from the platform could slow down one of the world's most valuable companies and chill the tech sector's rise. Facebook shares plunged 7%, biggest fall since September 2012. This chart is from Jamie at Reuters. This is another chart from Bloomberg: Facebook versus the NASDAQ. And finally, on this matter of Facebook, peak social media, Facebook problem or just another blip? Facebook, Snap and Twitter stocks drop. This is interesting. President Trump's approval rating among white evangelicals is 78% in a Pew poll. That's up from 72% in January, when allegations of the Stormy Daniels affair and hush money payments were first coming to light. Life is back to normal. I forgive and I forget. At the same time, also, Prince Al-Walid bin Talal backed into a corner, couldn't say anything else. Bashar al-Assad visited the Syrian army in eastern Ghouta and said, "You're fighting the whole world's battle." In a tweet, I was saying that he's been quite effective. I mean, he went on a drive-through, obviously, and he was filming it, I think, on his mobile phone, and then he gets filmed. But the point I was making was, through all the noise, and it gets very noisy at times, particularly when these mercenaries were getting beaten in Ghouta, and he's able to seemingly get his signal through that noise, and the signal being, "I'm in charge of Ghouta now," and it's a fait accompli. ICRC President Peter Mauro told reporters in Geneva the credibility of a Turkish Red Crescent working in Afrin with the Kurdish population is close to zero. Xi Jinping: all personnel of state organs should always put the people in the most prominent place in their hearts, he said. All acts and schemes to split China are doomed to failure and will be condemned by the people and punished by history. Those pesky splitists over in my piece on the 5th of March was about Xi Jinping, president for life. The upcoming Trump-Kim meeting in May promises to be the summit of the century, says M.K. Bhadrakumar. Have a read. Exploiting women for prostitution is a crime against humanity, said the Pope. I like the Pope. These are the world's most traded goods, according to the World Economic Forum. Let's move on to the currency markets. Euro dollar 123.40, dollar index 89.93, Japanese yen 106.28, Swiss franc 0.9519, the pound 140.30. Strong recovery yesterday. The Australian dollar is at 0.7709, India rupee 65.195, South Korean won 1070.37, Brazilian real 328.57, Egyptian pound 17.6340, and the South African rand 12.0202. This is in my buy zone now for the rand. Dollar index, I'll put up a 3-month chart. My stop is at 88. Euro dollar, this chart is from T Commodity, 123.40. My view remains at 125.60 is quite an impossible hurdle at this point in time. The Bitcoin bust reminds Morgan Stanley of the NASDAQ crash, but faster. This is from business. WTI crude oil, well, we've had a good old bounce from that 60 area where we were looking, so we're going to drop through 60 and straight to 55. We've come back, we're now at $62.39. And T Commodity is getting quite bullish about it. Gold, last trading at 13.16. Let's see how that develops actually. Emerging markets, this multi-billion-dollar corporation is controlled by a penniless yogi. I couldn't resist the photograph. Burundi is to hold a referendum on extending presidential terms in May. The referendum will decide whether to amend the constitution to extend presidential terms to 7 years from 5. The proposed changes would limit the president to 2 consecutive terms, but would not take into account previous terms, potentially extending Nkurunziza's rule to 2034. This month, the ruling CNDD-FDD decided to give Nkurunziza the title of CNDD-FDD Party Visionary, after praising his ideas and teachings. Of course, he has a football club called the Hallelujah Football Club and a choir, while practicing hymns as he wanders around the country. South African all shares down 2.38% this year. Interesting article in Bloomberg quoting an analyst who reckons the rand will appreciate almost 9% to 11 versus the dollar, which is something I've been saying for a while. Dollar rand currently above 12. I think this is a buy zone, and I'd look to buy it. Yeah, or close enough. Milosh plans a $1 billion investment in a Nigerian bank. Milosh Global is looking to inject as much as $1 billion to recapitalize Nigeria's Unity Bank PLC, which is struggling to build buffers after a slowdown in Africa's biggest economy, according to 2 people familiar with the matter. Milosh offered to invest $700 million in equity, $300 million in 5-year bonds that can be converted into shares in the Nigerian lender. The private equity firm will get an initial stake of about 30% in exchange for its first equity investment of $250 million. An investment in Unity Bank will be Milosh's third in a publicly traded Nigerian company since it agreed to pump $350 million into oil services company Geopolitical Oil and Maritime Services in February, and to provide a $250 million financing facility to Resort Savings and Loans PLC. What they have, they call it the Milosh Equity Subscription Agreement, and it's quite an interesting strategy. Have a look at it. Rich wrap-ups in the Africa section under Nigeria. Nigerian all shares up 9.42% so far this year. The Ghana Stock Exchange, Africa's best, if not the world's, is up 25.27% so far this year. Zimbabwe changes empowerment law limiting majority ownership to diamond and platinum. That's a positive development. AB InBev is to expand in Tanzania with a new $100 million brewery in Dodoma. The company is also building a brewery in Nigeria. And said earlier this month the continent was amongst its fastest growing territories. Let's move on here to Kenya. Cambridge Analytica, in this interview on Channel 4, are saying they staged and managed Kenya's president's campaigns. We have rebranded the entire party twice, written the manifesto, done research, analysis, messaging. I think we wrote all the speeches and we staged the whole thing. So just about every element of this candidate, Turnbull said, of his firm's work for Kenyatta's political party known as the National Alliance until 2016 and subsequently as the Jubilee Party. Kenyatta came to power in 2013 and won a second and final term last August, defeating Raila Odinga by 1.4 million votes. At a prior meeting, Turnbull told the reporters our job is to really drop the bucket further down the well than anybody else, to understand what are these really deep-seated fears and concerns. It's no good fighting an election campaign on the facts, because actually it is all about emotion. US Army Journal, 1997. Kenya inflation rate close to a 5-year low. That encouraged the central bank to cut its benchmark lending rate by 50 basis points to 9.5%, which is the first cut since September 2016. Kenya's foreign reserves jumped to 8.83 billion. That's including the proceeds from the Eurobond, the central bank said, and that plus a $989.8 million in precautionary IMF facility provides some buffer against exogenous shocks. The NSC reported its full year earnings. Let me talk you through that. Operating income was up 10.466%. Other interest income was up 4%. Other income was down 20%. Total income was up 5.4%. 5.56%. Admin expenses, they held them down, only up 2.643%. Profit before tax was up 15.473% to 269.186 million. Profit after tax was up 17.55%. Basic EPS was up 16.9%. They lifted the dividend by 11.11%. They spoke of an improved cost-to-income ratio of 66% from 68% the previous year, speaking of intending to launch the derivatives market this year. The 16.9% year-on-year increase in EPS was predominantly driven by growth in equity turnover, which was 17% year-on-year, which was higher than expected given the prolonged election period, actually. ROE of 11%, launching the derivatives market as well as promoting newly launched products like ETFs and REITs. Look, I think these were strong earnings. I think there's a reasonably good pipeline. They're absolutely correlated to turnover. Yesterday we had a real big day, nearly $2 billion, 2 billion shillings, which is $20 million. So I'm bullish about that stock, actually. I'd buy it on dip. Safaricom firmed 1.69% yesterday to regain an all-time closing high of 30, and it's up 12.149% year to date. Equity surged 3.92% to close at 53, which is a 36-month high, and that is up 33.33% year to date and ahead of its full year earnings release. Barclays, which was one of my picks for the year, rallied 2.092% to close at 12.20, a 23-month high, and is plus 27.083% in 2018. It was launched a Tamiza app, which is Swahili for achieve, and basically getting into the mobile lending game. My article over the weekend was about geothermal energy in Japan and KenGen. I actually done a little video of it, so if you don't want to read, you can always just listen. KenGen share price is up 5.263% year to date. Kenya is in the top 10 of geothermal countries based on installed capacity. According to Kenya Wall Street, Heidelberg Cement, Dangote Cement and Titan Cement of Greece have formally dropped out of the bid to acquire ARM Cement. Lafarge has engaged a team of consultants to conduct a due diligence. Apparently, they're the last people standing. ARM closed below 10 yesterday, which is a 9.5-year low. Nairobi All Share surged to a fresh all-time high. It's now up 9.02% this year. The NSE 20 is up 3.45% this year. The final link on Rich Wrap-Ups, if you want to dial into any stock at the NSE, that's the link to click. Thank you.